She ruled with an iron will and a frozen heart, until a cheap necklace shattered her control. At a lavish dinner, she tried to buy away poverty, but was calmly defied by true dignity. When she saw the necklace from her childhood on a little girl's neck, her past hit back hard. Now the billionaire who once owned everything seeks the one thing she lost, her soul. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. I promise that this will be the best story you will hear in your life. Eleanor Blackwood was feared for her coldness, worshipped for her discipline, and admired for transforming control into a symbol of power. At 72, surrounded by luxury and convenient silences, she maintained a routine shielded by privilege. Her name commanded respect in every boardroom across New York City. The Blackwood Corporation, a real estate empire she had built from modest beginnings, now cast shadows across Manhattan's skyline. On this particular evening, Eleanor sat alone at her usual corner table at Lumiere, the most exclusive restaurant in the city. The establishment's soft lighting was designed to flatter aging skin, but Eleanor had no concern for such trivialities. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun that had become her signature style, her posture impeccable, her gaze calculating. "Your eye. Usual, Miss Blackwood?" The sommelier appeared with a bottle of Chateau Margaux 1982. Eleanor nodded without looking up from the financial report on her tablet. She didn't need to inspect the wine, it would be perfect, as everything in her carefully curated life was expected to be. She'd spent decades ensuring that perfection surrounded her, eliminating variables, controlling outcomes. A commotion near the kitchen door briefly drew her attention. Eleanor despised disruptions. Her eyes narrowed as she observed a waitress emerge, followed by a small figure, a child, perhaps 8 years old, with unruly curls and worn clothes that immediately marked her as out of place in this temple of opulence. "Rebecca, I'm so sorry," the waitress was whispering to the maitre. "Tess, the babysitter cancelled last minute. She'll just sit quietly in the staff room. It's only for tonight." "You know the rules, Olivia," the maitre d' replied, his voice tight with concern. "Mr. Laurent would never—" "Is there a problem?" Eleanor's voice cut through their conversation. She hadn't planned to speak, but something about the scene had captured her attention. The restaurant fell silent. Eleanor Blackwood rarely addressed staff directly, and when she did, it seldom ended well for them. "No problem at all, Miss Blackwood," the maitre d' assured her, moving toward her table with practiced deference. "Just a small staffing issue we're resolving immediately." Eleanor's gaze fixed on the child, who wasn't cowering as expected, but was instead studying the room with quiet curiosity. In her hands was a worn paperback, its cover faded from frequent handling. "Your waitress brought her daughter to work," Eleanor stated flatly. "Yes, ma'am. An unfortunate situation that won't happen again. We'll comp your meal tonight for the disruption." Eleanor waved away the offer with manicured fingers, adorned with a single flawless diamond ring. "The child can wait at my table." The maitre d' blinked in confusion. "Pardon?" "You heard me." Eleanor closed her tablet. "The girl can sit at my table while her mother works. It's a large table for one person, and I prefer to solve problems efficiently." Minutes later, the child was seated across from Eleanor, her small form nearly swallowed by the plush chair. The girl's mother hovered anxiously nearby. "Thank you, Miss Blackwood. I can't tell you how much—" "I didn't ask for gratitude," Eleanor interrupted. "Your daughter will be fine here. You have other tables to attend to." Olivia nodded quickly and reluctantly retreated, throwing concerned glances over her shoulder. Eleanor returned to her report, expecting the child to fidget, to disrupt her concentration. Instead, the girl quietly opened her book and began to read, her focus absolute. Eleanor found herself watching the child over the rim of her wine glass. There was something uncomfortably familiar about her composure. "What are you reading?" Eleanor finally asked, breaking the silence. The girl looked up, not with fear, but with the simple directness of childhood. "Little Women. It's my favorite." "Isn't that a bit advanced for someone your age?" "My grandma gave it to me before she went to heaven," the girl replied. "She said stories help us understand people better than real life sometimes." Eleanor felt something shift inside her, a discomfort she couldn't immediately identify. What's your name? Lily. The child closed her book, keeping her finger between the pages to mark her place. Are you a queen? The question startled Eleanor into a short laugh. What makes you ask that? Everyone treats you like one, and you sit very straight, like in the pictures of queens in my history book. For the first time in years, Eleanor felt genuinely amused. No, not a queen, just a businesswoman. My mom says business people are important because they make decisions that affect everyone. Your mother is correct. She also says that important people have important responsibilities. Eleanor's amusement faded. Indeed. Throughout dinner, Eleanor found herself engaged in the most honest conversation she'd had in decades. Lily asked questions without agenda or fear, and Eleanor found herself answering with unexpected candor. The child spoke of her school, her dreams of becoming a writer, and the community library where she spent her Saturdays while her mother worked extra shifts. As the evening progressed, Eleanor noticed a simple necklace around Lily's neck, a tarnished silver pendant with an ornate bee engraved on its surface. That's an interesting necklace, Eleanor remarked. Lily's small fingers touched the pendant with reverence. It was my grandma's. Her name was Barbara. Mom says it's been in our family for generations. It's not worth much money, but it's worth a lot of love. Eleanor's hand trembled slightly as she set down her wineglass. The pendant was identical to one she hadn't seen in over 60 years, one that had belonged to her own grandmother, Beatrice Blackwood. May I see it? Eleanor asked, her voice uncharacteristically soft. Lily hesitated, then carefully lifted the chain over her head and placed the pendant in Eleanor's outstretched palm. The moment the metal touched her skin, Eleanor felt the world shift. She turned the pendant over with trembling fingers and found what she knew would be there, a small hand-engraved star on the back, barely visible after decades of wear. Where did your grandmother get this? Eleanor asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. She said it was given to her by the kindest person she ever knew, Lily answered, someone who saw her when nobody else did. Eleanor closed her eyes briefly, as forgotten memories crashed through the carefully constructed walls of her mind. A humble apartment above a bakery, the smell of bread, a young girl giving her most precious possession to a friend who needed hope more than she needed a keepsake. Miss Blackwood, are you okay? Lily's voice sounded concerned. Eleanor opened, her eyes to find the child studying her with a wisdom beyond her years. Yes, she answered automatically, though nothing was further from the truth. She handed the pendant back to Lily, watching as the girl carefully returned it to its place around her neck. As the evening concluded, Eleanor summoned the restaurant manager. I want to pay this waitress's salary for the next 6 months, she instructed, writing a check with a steady hand that belied her inner turmoil. That's very generous, Ms. Blackwood, the manager stammered. It's not generosity, Eleanor corrected him. It's an investment. When Olivia approached to collect the signed check, Eleanor fixed her with an appraising look. Your daughter is exceptional. Thank you, Olivia replied, her expression a mixture of pride and wariness. She's my whole world. She mentioned, You work multiple jobs. Olivia's posture stiffened slightly. I do what's necessary to provide for her. And yet you refuse to take shortcuts, Eleanor observed. You could have left her home alone tonight, many would have. Some risks aren't worth taking, no matter the cost to myself. Eleanor nodded, an unexpected respect blooming within her. The manager will explain the arrangement I've made. Consider it recognition of your integrity. Miss Blackwood, I can't accept. You can and you will, Eleanor interrupted, rising from her chair. Your daughter deserves stability, and you deserve recognition for providing it against considerable odds. As Eleanor gathered her belongings, Lily approached, offering a handmade paper crane. For you, she said simply. Grandma taught me how to make them. She said they bring good luck. Eleanor accepted the small origami creation, holding it as carefully as if it were made of glass rather than notebook paper. Thank you, Lily, she said, her voice catching slightly. It's been a very long time since anyone has given me a gift, without expecting something in return. As Eleanor's driver held the door of her Bentley, she looked back at the restaurant. Through the window she could see Lily and Olivia, their heads close together, united in their shared life of struggle and love. For the first time in decades, Eleanor felt a crack in the foundation of her carefully constructed world. The empire she had built suddenly seemed hollow, its gleaming towers casting cold shadows rather than light. As the car pulled away from the curb, Eleanor opened her hand to look at the paper crane. Something about its imperfect folds and earnest creation stirred memories she had long suppressed, memories of a time before power and wealth had become her only measures of worth. In the silence of her car, Eleanor Blackwood, feared tycoon and merciless businesswoman, felt the first tear in 60 years slide down her cheek. The following morning, Eleanor's penthouse overlooking Central Park felt different. The minimalist design and priceless art that usually brought her satisfaction now seemed sterile and hollow. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, the paper crane resting on her palm, its presence incongruous against the backdrop of Manhattan's skyline. "Miss Blackwood, your 9 a.m. is confirmed," her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "The board is assembled and waiting." Eleanor didn't respond immediately. For the first time in 4 decades, she was questioning her routine. The quarterly board meeting, where she would once again demand increased profits at any cost, suddenly seemed meaningless. "Ms. Blackwood," her assistant prompted. "Cancel it," Eleanor replied. "Cancel everything for the week." "Everything? But the Morrison acquisition—" "Can wait," Eleanor finished firmly. "Tell them I'm taking personal time." The silence that followed spoke volumes. Eleanor Blackwood never took personal time. "Yes, ma'am," her assistant finally responded, unable to hide her confusion. Left alone, Eleanor moved to her study, a room she rarely used for anything but work. From a hidden safe behind a Rothko painting, she retrieved a small wooden box she hadn't opened in decades. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted the lid. Inside lay fragments of a life she had systematically erased, a faded photograph of a smiling woman with kind eyes, a handwritten recipe card for apple strudel, a newspaper clipping about a small bakery in Brooklyn, and an empty space where a silver pendant with the letter B had once rested. "Barbara," Eleanor whispered, touching the photograph. But the woman wasn't Barbara. She was Beatrice Blackwood, Eleanor's grandmother, the woman who had raised her in a modest apartment above the family bakery, the woman whose pendant now hung around Lily's neck. Eleanor sank into her leather chair, memories flooding back with painful clarity. She had been Eleanor Bennett then, not Blackwood. She had reclaimed her grandmother's maiden name after making her first million, convinced it sounded more impressive for the empire she was building. The bakery had been her home until she was 18, the warm flower-dusted sanctuary where her grandmother had taught her about honesty, hard work, and compassion after her parents had abandoned her. The memory of kneading dough beside her grandmother, listening to stories of resilience and kindness, had been locked away for so long that its sudden resurgence left Eleanor breathless. "What happened to me?" she whispered to the empty room. The answer came in fragments of memory. The rejection from the business school she'd dreamed of attending, the banker who had laughed at her loan application, the string of men who had underestimated and dismissed her, the first time she had fired someone who questioned her ethics, the rush of power she had felt when fear replaced respect in people's eyes. Somewhere along the way, the girl who had wanted to expand her grandmother's bakery into a chain that would bring joy and community to neighborhoods across Brooklyn had disappeared. In her place stood a woman who demolished historic buildings to erect luxury high-rises, who evicted families to increase profit margins, who measured success by the number of competitors she had crushed. Eleanor picked up her tablet and, for the first time in years, searched for news unrelated to business. She typed "Community Libraries, New York City funding cuts," and was immediately faced with dozens of articles about neighborhood libraries fighting to stay open amid budget constraints. One headline caught her eye: "Riverside Community Library faces closure. Local children stage read-in protest." The accompanying photo showed a group of children sitting on the library steps, books open in their laps. Among them, Eleanor immediately recognized Lily. her face serious as she held up a sign that read, "Books give us wings." Eleanor set down her tablet and walked to her bedroom. Opening her expansive closet, she pushed past designer suits and gowns to the very back, where a simple cardboard box lay untouched for decades. Inside was a worn leather-bound journal, her grandmother's recipe book and life philosophy combined. The first page contained no recipe, just a handwritten quote. "We are not measured by what we accumulate, but by what we can multiply in the lives of others." Eleanor traced the faded handwriting with her fingertip. How completely she had rejected this philosophy, building her life on its opposite, accumulation at all costs. For 3 days, Eleanor remained in her penthouse, refusing calls from concerned board members and business associates. She spent hours reviewing her company's projects, seeing them through new eyes. The luxury development that would replace a community center, the beachfront property that would block public access to the shore, the deal with a supplier known for exploitative labor practices but offering the lowest prices. On the third night, she dreamed of her grandmother's bakery, the smell of fresh bread, the sound of laughter, the warmth of community. She woke with tears on her face and clarity in her mind. By dawn, Eleanor had made her decision. She showered and dressed not in her usual designer suit, but in simple slacks, and a blouse she'd almost forgotten she owned. She made a single phone call before leaving her penthouse. "Find everything you can about Olivia and Lily Thompson," she instructed her most trusted investigator. "School records, work history, family, background, and I need the address of the Riverside Community Library." 2 hours later, Eleanor sat in her car outside a modest apartment building in Queens. According to her investigator, Olivia and Lily lived in a one-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor. Olivia worked 3 jobs, waitressing at Lumiere 5, nights a week, administrative work at a dental office during weekdays, and weekend shifts at a grocery store when needed. Lily attended the local public school, where she maintained exceptional grades despite their financial circumstances. Eleanor wasn't sure what had drawn her here. She watched as residents came and went, many looking tired as they headed to early shifts or returned from night work. This was a world she had deliberately left behind, a reality she had spent a lifetime insulating herself from. Her phone buzzed with a message from her investigator. "Thompson Girl volunteers at Riverside Library. Every Saturday. They're hosting a fundraiser today starting at 10 a.m. Eleanor directed her driver to the address. The library was a weathered brick building with faded signage and worn steps. Outside, a small crowd had gathered around tables stacked with baked goods and handmade crafts. A banner proclaimed, "Save Our Stories, Riverside Library Fundraiser." Eleanor spotted Lily immediately. The girl was helping an elderly woman arrange cookies on a display plate, her face animated as they chatted. The silver pendant glinted at her throat. Taking a deep breath, Eleanor stepped out of her car, ignoring her driver's surprised expression. She approached the bake sale table, aware of curious glances from those who recognized the infamous Eleanor, Blackwood standing among them without her usual entourage. "Hello, Lily," she said quietly. The girl looked up, her expression shifting from confusion to recognition. "Miss Blackwood, you came to our fundraiser." "I did," Eleanor confirmed, feeling strangely nervous. "I read about your library's situation." Lily beamed. "We're trying to raise money to keep it open. The city says they can't afford to run it anymore, but we need our library. It's where I learned to love reading." Eleanor glanced around at the modest fundraiser. The earnest efforts were touching but clearly insufficient against the machinery of city budgets and property developers. "Who's in charge here?" she asked. "Miss Abernathy," Lily pointed to a grey-haired woman directing volunteers. "She's been the librarian for 30 years. She knows every book and every kid who's ever come through those doors." Eleanor approached the woman, who was too busy organizing children to notice the business mogul standing before her. "Excuse me," Eleanor said. "I'd like to discuss the library's situation." Ms. Abernathy looked up, recognition dawning slowly on her face. "Miss Blackwood, this is unexpected. I understand this library is important to the community," Eleanor said, struggling to find the right words. How long had it been since she'd had a conversation that wasn't about power or profit? "It's everything to these children," Ms. Abernathy replied, a protective edge to her voice. "But I suppose prime real estate is prime real estate, isn't it?" Eleanor blinked, confused, then understood. "You think I'm here to buy the property, aren't you? Your company has acquired half the underperforming public buildings in this city." The accusation stung with its truth. Blackwood Corporation had indeed become known for purchasing struggling public institutions from cash-strapped city departments and converting them into profitable ventures. "Not today," Eleanor said firmly. "Today, I'm here because this place matters to a child who made me question everything I thought I knew about value." Miss Abernathy's expression softened slightly. "Well, you're welcome to buy some cookies then." Eleanor smiled, a real smile that felt foreign on her face. "I'll do better than that. I'd like to make a donation." She removed her checkbook from her purse and wrote with a steady hand. Then handed the check to Miss Abernathy, whose eyes widened as she registered the amount. "This is," the librarian faltered, "enough to purchase the building from the city and establish an endowment for ongoing operations," Eleanor completed the thought, "with the condition that it remains a public library in perpetuity." The commotion that followed drew Lily to Eleanor's side. "What's happening?" the girl asked, looking between the stunned librarian and the composed businesswoman. Eleanor knelt to meet Lily's eyes. "I'm helping your library stay open." "Forever?" Lily asked, hope brightening her face. "Forever," Eleanor confirmed. "Some things are too important to lose." As the news spread through the small crowd, Eleanor felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest, not the cold satisfaction of a business victory, but a warm sense of rightness that reminded her of the feeling she'd had as a child, pulling fresh bread from her grandmother's oven. For the first time in 60 years, Eleanor Blackwood felt like Eleanor Bennet again, the girl who had once believed in something greater than wealth and power. The girl who had worn a silver pendant with the letter B and had given it to her best friend Barbara when she needed courage more than Eleanor needed a keepsake. The realization hit Eleanor with stunning clarity. Barbara Thompson had been her childhood friend, which made Olivia her daughter and Lily her granddaughter. The pendant had completed its journey, finding its way back to Eleanor through the family of the friend she had long forgotten. And with that thought, Eleanor knew exactly what she needed to do next. The Blackwood Corporation boardroom fell silent as Eleanor entered. For the first time in memory, she was late to a meeting. For the first time ever, she was dressed in business casual rather than her trademark power suit. But most shocking of all was the gentle smile that had replaced her usual stern expression. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, not taking her customary seat at the head of the table, "I've called this emergency meeting because Blackwood Corporation is about to undergo significant changes." The 12 board members exchanged nervous glances. In the corporate world, significant changes usually meant layoffs, restructuring, or hostile takeovers. "For 40 years," Eleanor continued, "I've built this company on a simple premise: maximum profit at any cost. That ends today." Richard Harmon, the CFO who had been with Eleanor for 20 years, cleared his throat. "Eleanor, perhaps we should discuss this privately before—" "There's nothing to discuss, Richard," she interrupted, but without her usual sharpness. "I've made my decision. The Morrison acquisition is cancelled." Gasps echoed around the table. The Morrison deal, a plan to acquire and demolish a historic neighborhood for luxury condominiums, had been in development for 3 years. That project represents a projected profit of $600 million, Thomas Wells, the head of development, protested. "The shareholders will revolt." "The shareholders will adjust," Eleanor replied calmly, "because instead of that project, we're launching something new, the Blackwood Foundation for Educational Opportunity." She distributed folders containing her vision, a comprehensive educational initiative that would provide full scholarships, including tuition, transportation, meals, medical and psychological care, and access to books in multiple languages for 1,000 low-income children annually. The scholarships would automatically renew through postgraduate studies as long as academic interest was maintained. This isn't charity, Eleanor emphasized as the board members scanned the documents, with expressions ranging from confusion to outright horror. It's social investment with dignity. It's financial suicide, Richard countered. You're talking about allocating 30% of our annual profits to this foundation. 50%, Eleanor corrected him. I've already signed the paperwork. The boardroom erupted into chaos. Board members shouted questions and objections, some already typing frantically on their phones, likely contacting major shareholders or their legal teams. Eleanor let the commotion continue for exactly 1 minute before raising her hand. Decades of conditioning silenced the room immediately. I understand your concerns, she said, which is why I'm offering each of you a choice. Join me in this new direction, or tender your resignation with a generous severance package. You can't be serious, Thomas said, his face pale. This company exists to create value for shareholders, not to fund your sudden attack of conscience. Eleanor smiled. Interesting definition of value, Thomas. I've been re-examining mine lately. Did you know that there are libraries in this city where children sit on the floor because there aren't enough chairs, where they share tattered books because there's no budget for new ones, yet these same children maintain perfect grades and dream of universities they can't afford to attend? That's unfortunate, Richard said carefully, but it's not our problem to solve. But it is, Eleanor insisted, because we've benefited from a system that creates these inequalities, and now we have the opportunity, no, the responsibility, to address them. By meeting's end, 3 board members had resigned on the spot. 4 had reluctantly agreed to give the new direction a chance, and 5 had requested time to consider their options. Eleanor considered it a better outcome than expected. As the boardroom emptied, her assistant approached with obvious trepidation. Miss Blackwood, there's someone here to see you. An Olivia Thompson. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's quite insistent. Eleanor felt her heart race. Send her in, please. Moments later, Olivia stood before her, still wearing her dental office uniform, her expression a mixture of confusion and suspicion. Miss Blackwood, she began, I hope you don't mind my coming here. The library board told me what you did. $100 million, I don't understand. Eleanor gestured to a chair. Please sit and call me Eleanor. Olivia remained standing. Why would you do this? What do you want? The question was direct, born of a lifetime of learning that nothing came without strings attached. Eleanor respected that. I want to offer you a job, she said simply. Olivia's eyebrows rose. I'm not qualified to work at a place like this. Not here, Eleanor clarified. At the foundation. I want you to run it. That's absurd, Olivia said flatly. I don't have the education or experience for something like that. But you have something more valuable, Eleanor countered. Integrity, the kind of leadership that's missing at the top. The position comes with housing, a dignified salary, healthcare, and fully funded college education, should you wish to pursue it. Olivia crossed her arms. And what would be expected of me in return? 2 things, Eleanor replied. Keep your daughter in school and ensure everything is conducted ethically. The rest we can figure out together. Why me? Olivia asked, her voice softening slightly. There must be thousands of people better qualified. Eleanor took a deep breath. Because I knew your mother, Barbara. We were friends as children. Best friends, actually. Olivia's arms dropped to her sides, her expression shifting to shock. What? My mother never mentioned knowing anyone named Eleanor. She would have known me as Eleanor Bennett. We lived in the same apartment building in Brooklyn. Your mother's family lived across the hall from my grandmother's bakery. Understanding dawned on Olivia's face. The pendant, Eleanor nodded. It was my grandmother's. I gave it to your mother when we were 10 years old. She was moving away and I wanted her to have something to remember me by. I never expected to see it again, let alone around your daughter's neck. Olivia sank into the chair, overwhelmed. Mom always said it came from someone special, someone who saw value in her when no one else did. She was the special one, Eleanor said softly. She believed in me when I was just a bakery girl with big dreams, and then life took us in different directions. I became this, she gestured around the opulent boardroom, and I forgot what really mattered. Until Lily reminded you, Olivia finished, beginning to understand. Your daughter has your mother's eyes and her wisdom. Eleanor smiled. She made me remember who I was before I became what everyone feared. Olivia studied Eleanor for a long moment. I'll need to think about this. It's a lot to process. Of course, Eleanor agreed. Take all the time you need. But Olivia Thompson didn't need much time at all. 3 days later, she accepted the position as Executive Director of the Blackwood Foundation for Educational Opportunity. Within weeks, she had assembled a small team of passionate educators and community advocates to design the scholarship program. Eleanor's break with her past created ripples throughout her world. Executive resignations continued. Shareholders threatened lawsuits. Business publications ran headlines questioning her mental stability. At a summit of industry leaders, Eleanor refused to support a development project that would displace hundreds of families and announced a 5-year commitment of $2 billion for education and social assistance programs. She lost allies, but found her soul again. In the neighborhood where she had grown up, Eleanor initiated construction of a 5-story library. Books, auditoriums, a children's section, a language center with native-speaking teachers, and a philosophy center for children. Lily, now taking an active role, led conversation circles with other children about ethics, virtue, and the common good. Eleanor sat in silence, learning from the child she had once dismissed. The Foundation's first-year results were impressive. Over 1,000 active scholarships, hundreds of families lifted out of poverty through education, a nearly 400% increase in admissions to public universities. 15 international institutions offered exchange programs. 3 multinational corporations wanted to replicate the model. Surveys indicated a 94% public approval rating. The foundation had become an example of management, trust, and real impact. But profound change attracted new conflicts. A political group attempted to associate the project with partisan interests. Hackers invaded servers. False news circulated, trying to link the foundation to corruption. A false scandal was planted against Olivia, but transparency saved the institution's reputation. Public reports, independent audits, and community support protected the project. Trust only grew. Olivia established herself as a serious leader, articulating partnerships with universities, educational social networks, and research centers. One afternoon, Eleanor sat in the Foundation's modest conference room, listening as Olivia presented the quarterly results to community stakeholders. The transformation in the young woman was remarkable. Where once there had been exhaustion and weariness, now there was confidence and purpose. Olivia had discovered her gift for translating complex educational policy into actionable programs, and communities were flourishing as a result. Our retention rate for high school students has reached 97%, Olivia reported, compared to the city average of 73%. And 89% of our first cohort has secured college acceptances with full financial support. The audience of parents, educators, and community leaders applauded enthusiastically. Eleanor remained in the back of the room, content to witness rather than lead. This was Olivia's moment, and Eleanor felt a pride that transcended anything she had experienced in her business career. As the meeting concluded, a reporter approached Eleanor. "Ms. Blackwood, your foundation is being called a model for corporate social responsibility. What inspired such a dramatic change in your business philosophy?" Eleanor glanced across the room, where Lily sat cross-legged on the floor with a group of younger children, reading aloud from a dog-eared copy of Little Women. "Let's just say I've received a timely reminder of who I really am," she replied, "and that true wealth isn't counted in dollars." The reporter looked skeptical. "Many of your former colleagues have suggested this is either a tax strategy or evidence of declining faculties." Eleanor laughed, the sound genuine and warm. "They would think that, wouldn't they? When all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. When all you value is profit, every action must have a financial motive. And that's no longer true for you? I spent 6 decades accumulating wealth and power, Eleanor said. It brought me neither happiness nor fulfillment. In the past year, I've discovered something far more valuable: purpose. Later that evening, as Eleanor prepared to leave the foundation offices, she found Lily waiting for her in the lobby, clutching a notebook. "Ms. Eleanor," the child said, using the name she had adopted since learning of their connection, "I wrote something for you." Eleanor sat beside her on the bench. "I'd be honored to hear it." Lily opened her notebook and read from a carefully penned page. "The richest person isn't the one with the most gold, but the one who plants the most trees they'll never sit under." Eleanor felt tears spring to her eyes. "That's beautiful, Lily. Did you write that yourself?" The girl nodded, beaming with pride. "It's for our philosophy class. We're writing about what makes a good life." "And what do you think makes a good life?" Eleanor asked. Lily considered the question seriously. "I think it's about being kind even when it's hard, and remembering that everyone has a story we don't know yet." Eleanor gently touched the silver pendant at Lily's throat. "Your grandmother would be very proud of you. As am I. Mom says you knew Grandma Barbara when you were little like me." "I did," Eleanor confirmed. "She was my best friend, the bravest, kindest person I knew." "Do you think she'd like what we're doing, with the foundation and everything?" Eleanor nodded, emotion tightening her throat. "I think she'd say it's about time." On a crisp autumn morning, Eleanor stood at the entrance of her former penthouse, surrounded by movers carrying the last of her belongings. The vast space, once filled with expensive furniture and priceless art, now echoed with emptiness. Eleanor had donated most of her possessions to museums and charity auctions, keeping only what truly mattered: her grandmother's recipe book, a few photographs, and Lily's origami crane, now preserved in a small glass case. "Everything's loaded, Ms. Blackwood," the moving company supervisor informed her. "Are you sure this is all you want to take?" Eleanor nodded, surveying the space one final time. "Yes. The rest stays with the property." She had sold the penthouse to a foundation that would convert it into transitional housing for families recovering from homelessness. The irony wasn't lost on her. The woman who had once evicted countless families was now providing homes for those in need. 30 minutes later, her driver pulled up outside a modest apartment building near the new library in Brooklyn. Eleanor's new home was a simple 2-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor, with a small balcony overlooking a community garden. It was nothing like the luxury she had surrounded herself with for decades, but as she stepped inside, it felt more like home than the penthouse ever had. The apartment was within walking distance of the foundation offices and the library, allowing Eleanor to immerse herself fully in the community she was helping to rebuild. She no longer needed chauffeurs or private elevators. At 73, she had rediscovered the simple pleasure of walking neighborhood streets, greeting shopkeepers, and stopping to chat with children playing hopscotch on the sidewalk. Her phone rang as she unpacked a box of books. It was Richard Harmon, her former CFO. "Eleanor," he began without preamble, "the shareholders' meeting is tomorrow. They're voting on whether to force you out entirely." Though Eleanor had stepped down as CEO, she remained the majority shareholder of Blackwood Corporation, which gave her significant control over the company's direction. A coalition of board members and minority shareholders had been working for months to challenge her authority, claiming her new philanthropic focus represented a breach of fiduciary duty. "Let them vote, Richard," Eleanor replied calmly. "I've already transferred most of my shares to the foundation's endowment." "You did what?" Richard's shock was palpable even through the phone. "Eleanor, that's billions of dollars. Money that will now ensure the foundation's work continues in perpetuity," she explained. "I've kept enough shares to live comfortably, which is all I need." "I don't understand you anymore," Richard said, his voice a mixture of frustration and grudging admiration. "You spent your life building an empire, and now you're giving it away piece by piece." Eleanor smiled as she placed her grandmother's recipe book on a shelf. "I'm not giving it away, Richard. I'm investing it in something far more valuable than real estate or stock options." "And what's that?" "The future," she answered simply. "Not just mine, but everyone's." After hanging up, Eleanor continued unpacking, placing framed photographs around her new home. Most were recent, Olivia addressing a conference of educators, Lily leading a children's philosophy discussion, the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the new library. But one was very old, two young girls with arms around each other's shoulders, standing in front of a bakery. Eleanor and Barbara, aged 10, smiling with the unguarded joy of childhood friendship. Eleanor's doorbell rang, interrupting her nostalgia. She opened it to find Olivia and Lily carrying a homemade lasagna and a bouquet of sunflowers. "Housewarming gift," Olivia explained with a smile. "No one should have to cook on moving day." "That's very thoughtful," Eleanor said, genuinely touched as she ushered them inside. "But you didn't have to go to all this trouble." "It wasn't trouble," Lily insisted, placing the flowers in a vase she found in an open box. "Mom says sharing food is how you make a house feel like a home." Eleanor's throat tightened with emotion. "Your mother is very wise." As they shared the meal at Eleanor's small dining table, conversation flowed easily between the three generations. Olivia discussed the Foundation's expansion plans, including a new initiative to provide entrepreneurship training for parents of scholarship recipients. "We've realized that supporting the children means supporting the whole family," she explained. "Many of these parents have brilliant business ideas but lack capital and connections. What if we created a microloan program?" Eleanor suggested, "with mentorship from business leaders who actually care about community development?" Olivia nodded enthusiastically. "That's exactly what I was thinking. We could start with 20 families as a pilot program." As the adults talked strategy, Lily quietly arranged her school books on Eleanor's coffee table, settling in to complete her homework. Eleanor watched the child with wonder, still amazed by how this young girl had catalyzed such profound change in her life. "Lily has something to show you," Olivia said, noticing Eleanor's gaze. "She's been working on it for weeks." Lily looked up, suddenly shy. "It's not finished yet. I'd still love to see it." Eleanor encouraged her. From her backpack, Lily produced a carefully bound collection of papers. "It's a book I'm writing, about a queen who forgot how to be happy until she met a girl who reminded her what really matters." Eleanor accepted the handmade book with reverence. The cover featured a crayon drawing of a tall woman with silver hair, standing beside a small girl near a tree full of books instead of leaves. The title read, "The Queen's New Heart." "May I read it?" Eleanor asked softly. Lily nodded, watching anxiously as Eleanor turned the pages, reading the story written in careful, childish handwriting and illustrated with colorful drawings. The narrative was simple but profound, a tale of redemption and discovery that mirrored their own journey together. When Eleanor finished reading, she looked up with tears in her eyes. "This is the most beautiful gift I've ever received, Lily. Do you really like it?" the girl asked earnestly. "I love it," Eleanor assured her. "You have a remarkable talent for understanding people's hearts." Lily beamed with pride. "Ms. Abernathy says I should be a writer when I grow up." "You already are a writer," Eleanor corrected her gently, "and a philosopher, and a teacher." "A teacher?" Lily looked confused. "But I'm just a kid." "Some of the most important lessons I've learned came from you," Eleanor told her. "You've taught me more about courage and kindness in 1 year than I learned in 7 decades of boardrooms and business deals." Later, after Olivia and Lily had left, Eleanor sat on her small balcony, watching the sun set over Brooklyn. Her phone buzzed with news alerts about Blackwood Corporation's stock dropping amid leadership turmoil and strategic uncertainty. 6 months ago, such news would have sent her into damage control mode. Now she simply silenced the notifications. The next morning, Eleanor joined the daily operations meeting at the Foundation. What had begun as a small initiative had grown to a staff of 30 dedicated professionals working across education, family support, and community development programs. "The library computer lab is at capacity every afternoon," reported Jason, the technology coordinator. "We need to expand hours and equipment. The community college has offered to donate 20 refurbished computers," Olivia replied. "And we have 3 engineering students volunteering to teach coding classes." Eleanor listened with quiet satisfaction as the team problem-solved collaboratively. No one was jockeying for position or trying to impress the boss. Every suggestion focused on better serving the community. After the meeting, Eleanor joined Lily's philosophy circle at the library. 12 children between ages 7 and 10 sat cross-legged on colorful cushions, engaged in serious discussion about fairness. "But what if equal isn't always fair?" a young boy was arguing. "Like, if someone needs glasses and someone else doesn't, giving everybody glasses isn't really fair." "That's equity versus equality," Lily explained with the confidence of a seasoned teacher. "Sometimes people need different things to have the same opportunities." Eleanor sat quietly in the background, absorbing the wisdom of children untainted by the cynicism that had governed her adult life. These young philosophers saw clearly what she had missed for so long, that true justice required seeing each person's unique circumstances rather than applying rigid rules. As the session concluded, the children scattered to other activities, but Lily remained behind, approaching Eleanor with a serious expression. "Miss Eleanor, can I ask you something important?" "Of course," Eleanor replied. "You can ask me anything. Were you sad about giving up your big apartment and your company? Mom says you used to be the most powerful businesswoman in New York." Eleanor considered the question carefully. "I thought I would be sad. I believed those things defined me. The penthouse, the company, the power. But here's what I've discovered, Lily. None of those things made me happy. They made me important in other people's eyes. But inside, I was lonely." "And now?" Lily asked. "Now I wake up each morning, excited about the day ahead. I get to spend time with remarkable people like you and your mother. I get to see children discover books that will change their lives. I get to help families build better futures." Eleanor smiled. "It turns out that giving is infinitely more satisfying than taking." Lily nodded solemnly. "Grandma Barbara used to say that the best things in life can't be bought or sold." "Your grandmother was very wise," Eleanor said softly. "I wish I had remembered that sooner." 1 year to the day, after Eleanor had first encountered Lily at Lumiere restaurant, the foundation held a celebration at the new library. What began as a small gathering grew into a community event, with hundreds of families participating in a day of readings, performances, and shared meals. On the main stage, Eleanor stood before the microphone, surveying the diverse crowd. Children of all backgrounds played together, while parents chatted across differences of language and culture. College students who had received foundation scholarships helped elderly community members navigate technology stations. It was a vision of what society could be when barriers of opportunity were removed. 1 year ago, Eleanor began, her voice steady and clear, I thought I knew what success looked like. I measured it in square footage, stock prices, and the fear I could instill in a boardroom. She paused, smiling at the memory of her former self. I was spectacularly wrong. The crowd chuckled, many familiar with the story of Eleanor's transformation. Success isn't what we accumulate, she continued. It's what we multiply in the lives of others. It's seeing a child discover a book that opens new worlds. It's watching a parent secure their first small business loan. It's witnessing a community come together across differences to create something beautiful and lasting. Eleanor gestured to Olivia, who joined her on stage. None of this would be possible without our extraordinary executive director, Olivia Thompson, who took a chance on a reformed capitalist and showed me what true leadership looks like. As applause filled the space, Eleanor continued, but my greatest teacher has been someone who never set out to teach at all. Someone who simply lived her truth with such clarity that she illuminated the path for others. She extended her hand toward Lily, who sat in the front row. Lily, would you join us? The girl looked surprised but made her way to the stage, her silver pendant catching the light as she moved. This remarkable young person, Eleanor said, her arm around Lily's shoulders, reminded me of who I was before the world convinced me that worth was measured in dollars. She helped me find my way back to the values my grandmother taught me long ago, values I had buried beneath decades of ambition and fear. Eleanor knelt to meet Lily at eye level. You are my teacher, she said simply, the microphone carrying her words throughout the hall. And I am forever grateful. The audience rose in a standing ovation, but Eleanor barely noticed. In this moment, there were only 3 people who mattered: herself, Olivia, and Lily. 3 generations connected by a silver pendant and the values it represented. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Eleanor stood with Olivia watching. Lily led a group of younger children in creating a mural for the library entrance. "She's extraordinary," Eleanor observed. "Just like her grandmother." Olivia smiled. "Mom would have loved to see this. She always believed education was the key to everything." "Barbara saw potential in people when no one else did," Eleanor agreed, "including me." "I've been meaning to ask you something," Olivia said hesitantly. "The pendant. Why did you give it to my mother all those years ago?" Eleanor watched Lily guide a small boy's hand as he painted a star on the mural. Barbara was moving away. Her father had lost his job and they couldn't afford the rent anymore. She was heartbroken about leaving her school and friends. I wanted her to have something that would remind her she was valued, no matter where she went. "It meant everything to her," Olivia said softly. "She wore it every day until—" She paused, not needing to complete the thought. "When Lily was born, it was the first thing she gave her." "And now it's brought us full circle," Eleanor observed. 3 generations connected by a simple silver pendant and the values it represents. "What were those values?" Olivia asked. "In your grandmother's words?" Eleanor smiled, the memory crystal clear despite the decades that had passed. "She used to say, 'We are not measured by what we accumulate, but by what we can multiply in the lives of others.'" As the sun set, casting golden light through the library's windows, Eleanor looked around at the community they had built together. Not through wealth or power, but through connection and care. On the library's facade, engraved in multiple languages, a single sentence summarized the essence of transformation. "We are not measured by what we accumulate, but by what we can multiply in the lives of others." And in that moment, Eleanor Blackwood, once feared for her coldness and worshipped for her discipline, found herself whole at last, no longer defined by what she owned, but by what she gave. No longer admired for her power, but loved for her humanity. The silver pendant had completed its journey, bringing her back to the values she had once cherished, reminding her that it's never too late to rediscover one's true self and create a legacy of love rather than fear. As Lily caught her eye from across the room and smiled, Eleanor knew with absolute certainty that this connection, this purpose, this love, was the greatest wealth she had ever known. Dear listeners, we hope that Eleanor, Olivia, and Lily's story has touched your hearts. To follow more exciting journeys of personal transformation, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it here by clicking on the left. If you were moved by Eleanor's journey from a ruthless businesswoman to a compassionate philanthropist, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and the power of redemption. What did you think of Eleanor's transformation? Do you believe it's never too late to change? We look forward to your comments and reflections on this story of renewal